So a lot of you have been asking me about securing a non-student accommodation before you come into the country. I will share briefly my own personal experience, in fact our own personal experience, and perhaps it might help to shed some light on what you're looking to achieve. Hello and welcome to Menvic Studio. My name is Angele Ibesuku. If you're coming across me for the first time, you are very much welcome. I hope you like what you see and you decide to stick around. After I joined my husband as his dependent in early 2012, early on in 2013, we had to pack our bags and move back to Nigeria because our visa expired. Even though the company my husband was working for at the time agreed to sponsor him for a work visa, they didn't have the license to provide the sponsorship. And they did apply. In fact, they started the application process quite early before our visa expired, but they didn't do it properly and they were rejected twice. So by the time they received the second rejection, our visa had expired, so we had to move back to Nigeria. And we moved back to Nigeria and waited for them to get the license and then sponsor us for the visa, and then we returned back to the UK. To give a clear perspective of things, my husband actually moved to the UK in 2009 as a student. So if you count from the 2009 up until the 2013 when we had to leave, you find that he had been in the UK for a while. So between that time, he had rented a couple of different types of accommodations. He had been in student accommodations, he had been in house share, and he had also rented a one-bedroom apartment which was where we were before we had to move back to Nigeria. In fact, the one-bedroom apartment which we rented just before we moved back, we had signed a 6 months lease on that apartment, and unfortunately we only stayed there for 2 months before we had to return back. And even though the landlord tried to get another tenant to take over the place, but because of the lease agreement we signed, we had to keep paying for the place until he found someone. So even whilst we were in Nigeria, we paid for about 2 months before he found someone to take over the apartment. The point is, we had a reasonable renting history in the UK, and we also made sure that we left any of the rental properties we were in on good terms. So when we were ready to return back to the UK in August 2013, it took about 4 months for my husband's company to sort out their license. The landlord whom we last rented the one-bed flat from was more than happy to provide us a reference, but we were still not able to get an accommodation whilst we were still in Nigeria. But since we already knew exactly where we wanted to live and the sort of accommodation we were looking for, we signed up on a lot of the online letting platforms and we created an alert, and as soon as we landed in the country, the next day we started viewing accommodations back to back. I have made a video on how to find the best places to rent in Scotland and England. So if you're wondering how do you know exactly where to live or what the place would look like, I will leave the link in the description for anyone who's interested in that. But anyways, we booked a hotel close to where we're hoping to rent, and as soon as we landed the next day, we started viewing accommodations back to back. We found an accommodation we liked, and the landlord was also willing to rent this out to us. But in all, we stayed in a combination of a hotel and a bed and breakfast for about 2 weeks, because even though we found this accommodation relatively quickly, it took some time. We had to view properties, and then also there was the paperwork before we could actually move in. And the main reasons why we were able to secure the accommodation fairly quickly within the 2 weeks was because, number one, my husband already had a secure job and it was easy to show our proof of funds, which meant we were able to pay the rent. And number two, we had rented in the UK before and we had really good reference from our previous landlord. And that's it. There really is no secret or any magic to getting a non-student accommodation here in the UK. Most decent landlords and letting agents are really looking to see that you are who you are able to afford the rent, and you will not damage their property. And the only way for them to ascertain that you meet these criteria is for them to see you at the viewing and then also see your proof of funds and then see your reference. Trust me, if you fulfill the criteria I have mentioned, you would definitely find an accommodation, because after all, the landlords and the letting agents, they are in business and nobody wants their property lying vacant if they can get tenant to pay them for it. So the truth is that it's nearly impossible to get a non-student accommodation whilst you're still in your home country, because put yourself in the shoes of the landlords and the letting agents. There is no way for them to verify that you meet the criteria for them to give out their property to you. I think what one should focus on is how quickly can you actually get an accommodation as soon as you land. If you're coming in on a work permit, then you've already met some of the requirements, because with your job you can show that you're actually able to pay for the apartment or the accommodation you're looking to get, provided you're not going for an accommodation that your salary cannot maintain, because they have a way of checking for that. And if you're coming in as a student, if you're coming in with a spouse, if both of you can focus on getting a job as quickly as possible when you arrive, then that can also help towards your proof of income. But whilst you're still in your home country, do focus on finding temporary accommodations such as Airbnb or a hotel, or even a bed and breakfast. Bed and breakfast is cheaper than hotel and Airbnb, but it may not be suitable for families with children. But if you ask me, rather than relocating with all of your family at once, I think it's better that one person goes first and at least secure an accommodation before the rest of the family joins. However, if money is not a problem and you want to move with your family all at once, then focus on getting an Airbnb and plan for at least 4 months so you can give yourself some peace of mind. If you stay in an Airbnb for a period of time and you're really good there, then the owner may be able to provide you a reference for you to get a more permanent accommodation. So in summary, before you relocate, you should carry out some thorough research to have an idea of the area you're looking to get accommodation in, and as soon as possible, get on these online platforms and create an alert. And if properties come on the market, look at the properties. Even if you're not in a position to view the properties yet, just look at them, at least get yourself familiar with the process. Then aim to sort out your proof of income and previous landlord reference as soon as possible. All this will help you get ready so that as soon as you're in the position to start viewing accommodations, you know exactly what you're looking for and you know the process. If you do your due diligence and you take your time to make sure you have all the requirements, you would shorten the time it will take you to get an accommodation once you're in the country. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.